parts of Bristol County and into parts of Plymouth County as well, and very southern Norfolk County too. So, Eric, to your point a little earlier, we continue to watch this until the threat really does start to diminish.
That's kind of the SOP when it comes to tornado warnings here, because everything can change in the course of a couple of minutes. Something that looks weak can tighten up. Something that looks tight could weaken very quickly. And so when the Weather Service issues these, we stay with it. We bring you the latest information, what they're sharing with us. We've got a back channel to them where they're telling us what they're seeing and any reports that they're getting. And they let us know if they're extending warnings or if they're dropping them. And then we can pass it along to all of you who are out there, whether watching on WBZ or maybe streaming. You might be in your car and wondering what's going on. So you call up the app. You're looking at our stream there in CBS News Boston and getting some of the latest information. We just want to make sure that everyone gets through the evening safely here with this storm. But as mentioned, the warning extended to 5:45, so it will take us deeper into the evening, and this will be moving across the southeastern corner of the state. So in places like Mansfield, the Norton area, you're keeping a close eye on this one, certainly in Attleboro and North Attleboro. You're the closest as it starts to make its way out of Rhode Island. You do notice they chop back parts of the Rhode Island warning here with that latest update. And Mansfield, about 5:39 is when that would roll into town. North Attleboro around 5:25. So this is something that is not blasting across the state. I mean, 20 miles per hour is not a very fast motion for a tornadic storm around here. It might be with us for a while here. We did mention back in August, we had that same storm that just cycled and it dropped several tornadoes over time. It wasn't a consistent path, but it traveled from northern Rhode Island all the way over toward the Weymouth area. And we had a number of those confirmed tornadoes all along the way. And this may try to do the same sort of thing. But when we look at radar right now, again, I'm not seeing that really tight couplet, which is what we call it, when you've got really tight outbound winds next to inbound winds. That shows you your rotation. And right now that radar is pretty close, just off toward the east. You do see the hook. Now that we have higher resolution radar, and a big question we get all the time, every summer now, is do we get more tornado warnings than we used to? It seems like we do this a lot. The answer is absolutely yes. In 2011, we got upgraded radar, higher resolution, these different products that we show you now, including the correlation where we talk about tornado debris signatures, the resolution of some of our wind data. That's that correlation data, which we've been keeping a close eye on. These are new products, much easier to see what a storm is doing. It's changed the nature of the game. So back in the day, before maybe 2011, only the most serious, big, obvious storms were getting warnings. The smaller, more subtle storms were not getting warnings. Something like this, very subtle, might not have ever gotten a warning. But when that was upgraded, that was 12 years ago, right before actually the big Springfield tornado that we had that went all the way out to Charlton, that changed everything. And there's absolutely been an uptick in warnings since that technology was deployed. It's good news, bad news. The good news is you get more advanced warning. You see the more subtle tornadoes. The bad news is you get more warnings, and sometimes they don't always pan out because it's tough to say exactly what storm's going to go on and drop a tornado and what one is just going to look like it's about to and never actually drop one down to the surface. So it's a bit of a catch-22. But if you do believe we've been getting more of these, you are correct in that assessment. We absolutely do get more of these, and we run through this process more often over the course of a given year. Of course, last year, there was no rain at all. This year, it's nothing but rain, tornadoes, and downpours. And here we go again. So we have this broad downpour that extends from portions of Metro West into that Route 1 corridor, heading down into northern Rhode Island. It's the very end of that little hook that we've been watching for rotation. We do see broad rotation. It's certainly there. It's not tight. It's not right next to each other. Usually if we're looking for a tornado, you want a pixel. You notice all these little squares, little pixels like we have on your TV, but they're just bigger versions. You want a really bright couple of green ones versus a really bright couple of red ones, and that will show you where the rotation point is. And we don't see that at the moment. What we see is that the storm is spinning. You got red outbound, the green inbound. We know that the whole thing is moving around. It just hasn't tightened up to the point to drop one of those tornadoes here in eastern portions of Rhode Island. But it's getting awfully close now to the border and making its way over into Massachusetts. So we'll lose a Rhode Island storm and we'll pick up a Massachusetts-only storm as we head a little bit deeper into the hour here. The warning, if you're just joining us, is up until 5:45. It does extend very far to the east. They put this all the way out to Easton and Mansfield, and it's still a good half hour at least from those points. So you've got a ways to go to keep a close eye on this and see if it changes. Maybe your spouse is coming home from work or your kids are over at sports and you're wondering, what do I do? If you're in this warning, you want to stay inside in an interior room. You want to stay in a safe spot, certainly. You don't want to be driving around on the roads trying to pick everyone up. That's not a safe thing to do in a bigger thunderstorm with a tornado risk. You definitely don't want to go that route. Basically, you stay put in one of those more secure structures and you wait it out. You wait for the storm to move on by. Once it moves on by, you go back to your business, you go back to the rest of your evening, and hopefully we don't actually see any big confirmation of one. But you want to prepare. You want to make sure you're just doing the right things, taking some of the action to stay safe. We still have this broad rotation point. It's right around Route 120. It's about to enter North Attleboro in a few moments here and then head across Route 1 as well. So these are spots where you're definitely in the lowest level of your house and in a safer space. I want to send it back over to Jacob, who's got some new information.
So, Eric, you probably saw the radar jumping around just a little bit. What I'm doing is the radar is sent out at different levels. So we have different scan degrees. So a half degree, 1 degree, 1.5 degrees. And the National Weather Service, they are indicating that on a couple different scans that are slightly elevated. Eric mentioned that we're getting so close to the radar that we're not getting that sort of upper level scan or just elevated a little bit. Well, I was playing around with the radar a little bit, and there is a little bit more strong rotation at some of the higher levels. So that is why they continue to keep warning on this storm, that on the 0.9 degree and 1.3 degree radar tilts, Eric, they indicate some fairly strong rotation. So that is why they continued the warning. Right now, it is right along 295 south of Cumberland is what they indicate. So presuming it's right about there, right along 114 and just to the north of 295 at the moment, about to cross over into Massachusetts and eventually into North Attleboro.
Are we back to the lowest tilt here, Jacob, or are we still aloft?
We are at 0.6, yes. So we are at the lowest tilt at the moment.
Okay, great. Excellent. So when we talk about the different tilts, see if you ever have followed severe weather and you've talked about different types of thunderstorms, a mesocyclone. A mesocyclone is a small cyclone, meaning it's rotating. And so the storm itself is a rotating thunderstorm. So if you've got some of that rotation that extends up thousands of feet into the atmosphere, you've got your mesocyclone. These are the types of storms that spawn tornadoes. Not everyone brings that spin all the way down to the ground, but many of them do. If you're going to warn a storm, they're the most likely type of storm that would drop one. So that's why they're keeping a close eye on this. If it was something that was just very shallow at the surface and didn't look as impressive, they might not be as likely to warn it, but knowing that the whole storm is actually exhibiting some of that spin, and it's been holding on to it ever since eastern Connecticut, then certainly that's why they're just being extra cautious, making sure that people have warning and they can get to a safe spot in case something does drop out of this one. But circled in yellow is the point that we're still keeping a close eye on. It's right on the border of Massachusetts and Rhode Island now, and right south of Route 120. So it'd basically be right in here, and it'll be making its way along that route and over into North Attleboro, and it'll cross Route 1 after that. Obviously a busy artery, especially here in evening commute time. Everyone's coming home. We've got kids coming home from school, and certainly make sure you're in your safe spot and let everyone know if they're out on the roads, if you have any loved ones or friends, that you've got this warning in place, and tell them exactly where it's going, because we can track exactly where that point is and where it's headed, and by the bottom of the hour, it would be in the center of North Attleboro. So that is about, let's say, 5-6 minutes away from now. So you still got some time to get to that safer spot. These places have had a lot of advance warning, and this warning came out a while ago. That's great news. You always want to make sure you're giving people a longer heads up. Now, we've talked a lot about this storm. I do want to broaden out just a little bit so that everyone gets a sense to kind of set the table here, what we have going on this evening. Across the region, I've been getting a lot of questions about the Red Sox game tonight. Obviously, raining now in Boston. It's going to rain at a pretty good clip over the next hour, so I would say at the very least, they're probably talking about a late first pitch in Boston tonight. I wouldn't expect things to go as planned. Right around 7 o'clock. We've also got some of that steadier rain that's up across portions of 95 and up into the North Shore and toward Newburyport this evening, non-severe, but you'll be getting a pretty good dousing of rainfall out of this as it rolls on through. And then farther off toward the south and west, a little bit more juice. We've had the stronger storms into Connecticut. You can see more in the same places that had this tornado warning earlier on today around Killingly. All these will track across southeastern Mass. So you have the highest risk of storms, any isolated severe weather, and some of the highest downpours that we'll see for the rest of this system. It's a front that is just easing its way across the region. And if you're in the southeastern corner of the state, it won't be until much later on tonight that that front makes some progress and kind of clears the air. It's still very soupy outside, and the atmosphere is making use of all that soup, all that juice, pouring out some of the rainfall. We did get a little fortunate today. We've had plenty of rain in many spots, but the biggest downpours so far have been in Connecticut, and that's where flooding has been a bigger issue. Of course, places like Leominster, up into Lunenburg, Groton area, they could not use any more rainfall today. What we got today was already too much for that. So our warning is up until 5:45, and it's way out to the east. It extends all the way to Brockton, Bridgewater. You've got time to watch this storm, certainly. This is that kind of kidney-shaped storm that we've been keeping an eye on here, and it's the southern flank that has had the rotation, and it has crossed over into Massachusetts now. It's out of Rhode Island. And if you're in Plainville, heavy rainfall north side of this. The rotation's a little southy here, more toward the North Attleboro area, and it does still exist on radar. It's the same point we've been watching here. Can we switch over? I just want to check correlation coefficient for a couple of seconds here, maybe a couple scans back, just to see for sure. All right, thanks, Jacob, for switching that over. And I don't see anything glaring here. I don't blame you if you're looking at this and you're saying, what is this? What am I looking at on my TV screen? Is it breaking? Basically, in the bright red here, these are things that are highly correlated, like raindrops. They're all the same size. They all kind of look the same. So the radar can see that kind of data. Usually when we're looking for a tornado signature, we're looking, because the rotation's right in here, if there is a blue hole right in there, that would indicate debris in the air that's getting lofted up. That's a clear sign to us that there would be a tornado on the ground. And of course, you still have leaves on the trees. There's plenty of things that could be lofted up in the air. We don't see it at this time, but we'll keep an eye on this zone here. This is a good way for us to kind of get some real-time data as to what's happening at the surface without actually being in your town at the same time. But we absolutely do have a point, and did sharpen up here in the last scan, just got a new one. There's just this one zone right here. It's coming right toward North Attleboro. So again, not to scare, but to prepare. If you are in town, you want to be at that lowest level of your house. You want to be away from the windows, even if you had a bike helmet in the house. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but if a tornado is coming, there's debris around. And if this does touch down, not a terrible idea to have a helmet on if you're in the basement or somewhere in the house, just in case. It's all about just in case and making sure that you're staying as safe as you possibly can and putting maybe some of the nervousness to action, making sure you're in a better situation to prepare for this storm. But if you are in North Attleboro, you are watching this really carefully, and right along Route 1, this was just a little bit of a brighter scan. We'll see if it happens with the next one, which we'll get in about 30 to 60 seconds. We'll see if the green and the red brighten up a little bit, and if they touch a little bit more closely, that's a sure sign that we might have a tornado there. We absolutely have a rotating storm. That much is a given. But in terms of the confirmation, we still haven't had it today. No reports from anybody from this storm. It's just been a menacing-looking one and one that's had potential, but we haven't seen it realize the potential up until this point. So we're going to stay with it until it looks like it's done, until there isn't any rotation with it and there aren't any more warnings in place to go along with it either. Jacob?
Yeah, so some of the towns or areas that we're watching closest right now, Amvet Boulevard School. This is almost right near that school. So if you know North Attleboro and you are near the Amvet Boulevard School, you definitely need to be in your tornado safe place. To Eric's point, this is one of the sharper scans that we've seen over the past really half hour or so. Also, if you are near Water's Edge Estates, there's a First Hyundai right along, 295, Route 1. There is the possibility that you need to be in your tornado safe place too. Jay's Indian Kitchen, Gridiron Liquors, Casey's Classic Burger Bar, all of them, if that rings a bell and you're in that area, we want you to be in that tornado safe place. And just getting that new scan in at the moment, this is moving very close where that couplet is to right along Route 1, obviously a very busy corridor at most times of the day. Really at 5:30 in the evening on a Wednesday, even worse. So once again, if you are in basically North Attleboro Center or near there, you need to be in your tornado safe place. And if this continues, obviously moving towards the east-northeast, towards Interstate 95. So we're going to have to watch this one very, very closely. Eric?
And Jacob, we talk about, minute to minute things change. That latest scan was less impressive than what we just saw a couple minutes ago. I know it can be frustrating from a viewer standpoint, or if you're in the path of one of these storms, it's kind of back and forth and what's going to happen. And is there actually going to be a tornado? Is there one on the ground? But that's weather. That's what it's doing out there. It kind of oscillates back and forth. And that most recent scan took away some of that wind, looked a little less impressive. Hopefully that kind of a trend continues. Here you go back in time. You go one step back. You see the brighter green and red, and then 1 minute later, a little bit of a change. You drop back some of that green and red. And that's the way these storms are. It's not exactly a long track, huge tornado potential. It's more like a quick spin up kind of potential with this one. We've got the really high humidity to go along with it, and just all the right ingredients. Well, these days where the dew points are in the 70s, those are the types of days that we really pay a lot of attention to any of these storms. They can tap any sort of spin in the atmosphere, and there's plenty of juice out there in terms of the warmth and the humidity, and it hasn't felt much like September at all. There's another scan that just came in here, and again, it's not quite as impressive as what we saw a moment ago, but the rotation is still there. Plainville probably getting some stronger gusts now as well, right over Route 1. This is wind that's heading away from the radar. This is wind that's headed down toward the radar. So this is something that is certainly still spinning around the storm itself, and it is creeping closer to 95. Peak traffic hour here, a lot of people out on the roadways, and so hopefully everyone is just using a lot of caution. Now that we all have phones in our pockets that are screaming at us when there's a tornado warning, it's tough to not get one of those warnings, and it's easy to stream some of this information as well. We're on CBS News Boston all the time, whenever there's a warning, updating forecast, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there tonight who just tuned into the stream to figure out what is going on with this. If we track it off toward the west at the current speed, which is only about 20 to 25 miles per hour, it's over into West Mansfield around 5:39 tonight. So you've got about 9 to 10 more minutes before it will arrive in your town. We're going to stay with the warning until it is dropped, until the storm stops exhibiting all this rotation along with it. And it is potentially going to make its way all the way over toward the South Shore. I mean, there's not a big change in environment from what we have here in the Plainville area to say something a little bit over toward the Brockton area or even farther east of that. So we're going to keep an eye on it for all these communities who are around 495 and then heading a little bit closer to our radar site, which is in Taunton, on Taunton-Norton line right there. That's what that line is, and the kind of the hole in the middle of the radar. Heavy rainfall is in Rentham now, and it's moving over toward Foxborough, right on Route 1. Nasty evening. Some of these rainfall rates are around 2 inches per hour, so street flooding is another hazard and a more widespread hazard than just this tornado risk we've been talking about out there today. And if you're joining for just an update on Hurricane Lee, we have the new information in from the Hurricane Center. We'll be talking much more about the winds, the surf, who's going to be most impacted, certainly the coastline communities. Want to make sure you get a good update this evening on what happens there. And as soon as we can kind of get away from this tornado warning, hopefully at some point, we'll be able to talk about that much more. And we also have lots of that information on WBZ.com if you need it right away. But this latest scan again shows some stronger wind gusts here, but still nothing that's terribly tight that's really showing up. Jacob?
Yeah, so actually texting with the one and only Zach Green. He says that he's in the basement with his baby and his dog. He lives in the Plainville, North Attleboro area. He's saying the winds were ramping up and not entirely impressive, but definitely swaying things around quite a bit. And that's exactly what we're kind of seeing on our radar. Now, I'm also monitoring Twitter. Thank you to everyone who's following along and tweeting us what they are seeing. I did get a report out of the Foster area in Rhode Island with multiple trees down on Shippey Schoolhouse Road in Foster. And so that kind of speaks to just the ebbing and flowing of these storms where we have to watch them closely. And if they tighten up for a scan or two, you know, we have to continue to be on guard. And so that's why the National Weather Service has continued this warning, once again lasting until 5:45 in the evening, so about 12 minutes from now. One thing you'll note, Eric, is they have removed Rhode Island out of this, so they're doing a good job of trimming back areas that no longer need to be in their tornado safe place. But if you are in Plainville, if you are in Mansfield, if you are near Route 1 and Interstate 95, you need to be in that tornado safe place. As we continue to track this storm, it started at about 4:10, so we've been on there for the last an hour and 23 minutes or so, tracking the same cell. This is almost a carbon copy of the same sort of long track supercells that we saw 3 weeks ago or so on August 18th. But the one thing that we'll note different is that it's not as definitive that these are on the ground. We don't have those same sort of very evident tornado debris signatures. Still want to respect that polygon, though, as we continue to look at the radar. Zooming in, Eric, I mean, not much that we're seeing right now.
That really did dissipate quite a bit in the last couple of scans, because a short while ago, where we had the warning, it was down toward North Attleboro. There's that point. We go back in time. That's 5:25 right there. You see the timestamp at the top of the screen. Watch that. And there it dissipates. And at 5:34, it's dropped out. Not only that, but if we go over to just the reflectivity, the actual radar, the rain has largely left this area. The whole storm is kind of migrated up to the north here, and now it's right along Route 1. So that is an encouraging sign. North Attleboro, I think you're out of the woods now, as we've seen that area of rotation diminish and the heavy rainfall also lift north of the city. We're still watching around Plainville and over toward Mansfield along Route 1, but that last scan was definitely the most positive that we've seen so far in the whole run of this storm, or we saw very little rotation showing up along with it. The Weather Service does have the warning up until 5:45, and we will stay with you until they decide it is time to drop that warning along with it. But if we can go back just one more time for that wind scan, the velocity look at it, certainly much, much better here. Now we look toward Plainville, don't really see anything showing up here. We just have some gusty winds along with it. This is the point we were originally watching. We're back in time now around 5:20, and then you watch that fall apart, and now we've just got heavy rain off toward the north. So that is excellent news, and hopefully that'll be cause for this to finally start winding down a little bit, and we'll be able to drop that tornado warning. But certainly at this point, that is an encouraging sign, the best we've seen so far. We would still have heavy rainfall, some flash flooding here in Walpole and down toward Plainville on Route 1 and into Mansfield. That rain probably just starting to fall the first few drops, and it'll pick up in intensity in the next few minutes. And then this will be tracking off to the east, so heavy rain will head over toward Randolph in Brockton as well, and much of the South Shore. You'll likely get some downpours this evening. We still have a ways to go, unfortunately, with rain tonight. There'll be more downpours, more storms, and I think the biggest focus for some of the higher end potential here will be toward a southeastern corner of the state, although it is raining around Boston and on the North Shore as well. So they've been dealing with rainfall just impacting the drive home, some after school plans, as well as the Sox game, which I haven't been able to check to see if they've already postponed that first pitch, but I'd be surprised if that first pitch goes on as scheduled tonight. Jacob, did I see you have some more information?
Yeah, so just one thing that I'll note, Eric, is as you kind of mentioned, the scans of reflectivity, it doesn't have that same sort of hook echo that we look for in some of the more impressive tornadoes. It's more of just a linear storm, and in order to get that tornado to really drop, we would have to have that sort of formation showing up on reflectivity. And when we click over to some of the wind scans, it's starting to maybe scan once again with a little bit of reflectivity there, just along 152 and Route 1, maybe near 106. So that is why we continue to watch this closely. But on our reflectivity, it's just not as impressive as it was even a couple of minutes ago. But certainly something still there, spinning. Hopefully it's up in the atmosphere and not on the ground. We are just so close to the Taunton radar. You see that spinning there, just to the northwest, that storm of the radar near Norton. And so, Eric, I was actually Googling to see if the Red Sox first pitch was going on. I'll have that for you in just a sec. But there is some video going on, and we're trying to effort that, of Route 146 and Route 116 in Rhode Island. It was a traffic camera that the Rhode Island Department of Transportation puts up. It looks like something may have crossed over that sort of intersection. So we'll try to effort that and get that on the air. But the National Weather Service posting that they'll need time to examine all the data and also the video along with the survey to see what exactly that was. But something fishy that we're trying to effort to get on air.
Interesting. What town was that in, Jacob? Do you know?
That was 146 and 116 in Lincoln, Rhode Island. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we continue to watch this for you, but certainly we've had a busy afternoon of downpours and some storms, and we'll see what the Weather Service has to say about any of those videos or any of the rotation that we saw earlier on today. There is still a little appendage here that's right around 106. It's not striking. It's not something that's screaming tornado like what we saw a few weeks ago, where those were very obvious signatures and really popped. This one is very subtle. So this is probably the type of thing where there might be a little quick spin like Jacob's talking about. We'll see what that video looks like, but something that just kind of sweeps across and then might lift back up, maybe little eddies of swirling winds that come down out of the storm. But we haven't seen the big signature that we've seen in some of the other storms that we've had so far this year. But the warning does continue for a few more minutes. Right now it's 5:38. It's up until 5:45. We'll see if they continue that or if they drop it at that time. Heavy rainfall will be a given for all these towns, though, as it tracks off to the northeast at about 20 miles per hour. And there is some thunder and lightning along with it. We can actually take a look at a camera that we have over in Mansfield tonight. That looks over 495, which is just getting into that leading edge of some of the heavier rainfall. Just thick outside. It's so humid. It's been pouring at times. It's very much not been like September over the course of the last 10 days or so. I feel like the only September day we've had was the first day of the month. Other than that, it's been storms and high humidity and warmth and soupy nights, and definitely doesn't feel like we're heading into the fall season. Today's another one of those days where we've got more of these heavy downpours, very low cloud ceilings. You can see there, those clouds are almost on the ground. Feels like we've been living in a cloud out here lately. And what we don't see, again, is that really tight rotation point. It's something that we have to stay with because it has been cycling. We've seen it go back and forth a little bit between times where it looks really impressive and times where it looks less impressive. I still think the best that it looked all day today was with the initial warning that was coming out of eastern Connecticut and into western Rhode Island. I think if we end up seeing any confirmation, that's probably going to be the most likely spot. And that same spot is back in heavy rainfall. If we move it off toward the west here, you can see certainly we've got plenty of heavy rain, a chance for some flash flooding. This is a look at the wind speeds going back in time, and that's the spot there coming out of Killingly. That's where we saw it earlier on today and into the Foster area. This would look much more impressive earlier on, and now as it moves east, a little bit less so. So we'll be keeping a close eye until this warning does subside, and then once we get past this, we can talk a little bit more about hurricane impacts here in New England, and we can also talk about when the humidity will start to fall, because you are going to get a change in that air as we head into Thursday and Friday. We can, at least for a couple of days, put the rain and the downpours and the storms out of sight and out of mind. We all could use that here as we head into Thursday and Friday. That heavy rain is lifted now north of 495. Foxborough getting very wet. I think we can take a look over at Gillette Stadium tonight, where got a lot of activity here on opening week, and boy, it's just pouring buckets again tonight. Jacob, I see you got some more information just coming in.
Yeah, so it's likely that the tornado warning will expire at 5:45 unless it starts to re-strengthen, which is really good news. They've indicated that the last few scans have weakened quite a bit. Still a suspect, right? We still have to watch this one really closely, but at 5:45, it looks like the National Weather Service does plan on expiring this warning. Eric?
All right, it's great to have that back channel, one of our partners here in weather, and be able to talk to them back and forth and get some of that updated information on their thinking. The way it goes is if there's watches issued, those come from the Storm Prediction Center in Oklahoma. When there are warnings issued, they come from our local forecast office. And in Massachusetts, that's for the folks down there in Taunton. And if you're in New Hampshire, it comes out of Gray, Maine, actually. A different office handles that area. So we get to talk to all of them back and forth about what they're seeing, what they're watching, and how they're thinking about warning some of these storms. And at the moment, it looks like this may expire in the next 3 minutes, with the main risk being really heavy rainfall that's now into Norwood and the Randolph area. So you can expect a quick inch or 2 inches of rainfall as these move on through. Jacob, I see you got some more information.
Yeah, so they actually just expired, the warning. So it expired a couple minutes early, so that is the good news. Eric, you have been on the air for the last, I guess, an hour and a half tracking this same storm. I know that you're going to have some updates on a whole lot of things over the next couple of hours with WBZ News.
Yeah, it's been a week already, and it's just Wednesday afternoon, and we got a ways to go. So that was the latest. The warning is allowed to expire. We'll still have to keep an eye on it. It's not to say that some of these other storms behind it or even different parts of this line may try to spin up a little bit this evening. So we'll keep a close eye on all these for you. Again, this warning just expired. We're going to talk more about Lee and its potential track and impacts coming up in just a little bit. Chris and Paula, for now, I want to send it back to you.